Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today I'm going to tell you about a story that should be front and center in your minds, and hopefully you're posting on social media about it, hopefully you're letting other people know about it. But first, let me remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com so you can get all of our latest content. You can also follow us on Minds. You can follow us on Steemit/DTube. You can join our Discord channel. Guys, I read a lot of articles and post a lot of news, but I don't always make videos about it. If you want to keep up with the conversation, join the Discord channel. If you want to get text lists so you don't have to rely on YouTube or Facebook, join the text list, and I'll let you know as soon as the videos start. And if you want to follow our videos without YouTube, do so on BitChute. Finally, if you'd like to support, you can do so on Patreon or Subscribestar. And if you want to sign up for our email newsletter, check that out right there. And we have a new poll running on the website for those who just want to go have a little fun and decide whether you think there's an afterlife. But let's get to the serious things. The latest information that I want to go over involves this piece here from Tarak Haddad. You can see right here, it's his website, tarakhaddad.com. Lies, Newsweek, and control of the media narrative. First-hand account. If you're just tuning in, go back and watch my two other videos on Syria that we put out. Newsweek journalist resigns after censorship on Syria whistleblower. OPCW whistleblower destroys Duma gas attack theory. These should be the biggest stories right now. And if we had any real media, they would be the biggest stories. But instead, they're just relegated to the dustbin of history, and nobody's paying attention. And it's really getting quite frustrating. Now, I'll remind you guys, in case you haven't seen those previous videos, that Tarak Haddad is a journalist who was previously working for Newsweek until on December 7th, he published that he resigned from Newsweek after attempts to publish newsworthy revelations about the leaked Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons letter were refused for no valid reason. And if you guys aren't aware, Wikileaks about 3-4 weeks ago started leaking documents related to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which are clearly showing what most of us have suspected, many of us have suspected already, which is that we were being lied to, and that the Duma alleged gas attack in Syria last April, which Donald Trump dropped 100 Tomahawk missiles based on, was a lie, was another false flag lie. And so Wikileaks has been just releasing the emails and showing it, and the establishment is essentially ignoring it, not even talking about it. The few people who do talk about it are basically just using their soapbox to criticize anybody who listens to WikiLeaks and looks at the leaks. Well, Tarak Haddad, a journalist formerly of WikiLeaks, decided he was going to do his job, be a journalist, and write about this story. And instead, he ends up resigning. You can see here, he ends up saying he was threatened with legal action, and he decided he was going to publish his piece in the coming days. And he said, I'm sure the character attacks will follow, but thank you to everyone for the outpouring of support so far. And then he published it. And as he's publishing, like I said, it's right here on his website. We're going to go over that in a second. But he basically, again, outlines how the media works. Now, some of us, we know about the alleged project or Operation Mockingbird with the Mockingbird media. We know the media is controlled through the church hearings that came out in the 1970s that show that the government, the CIA, had agents working for the Associated Press, working for the Washington Post, working for the New York Times, and this continues up to this day. It continues all the way up to this time. And we sort of understand that, but this is a really beautiful behind-the-scenes look at how his editors and several editors were pressuring him to not publish this story. They called it a conspiracy theory, but they also have changed other stories of his in the past, and it definitely seems based on protecting or shaping some sort of narrative and protecting somebody who's behind the scenes. And so I really do recommend reading the piece. And there are people who are commenting on it, but for the most part it's being ignored by the mainstream. I'll show you just a little bit of it. You can see right here he writes, "A mafia runs editors. Freedom of the press is dead. Journalists and ordinary people must stand up." And he breaks it down into 6 different sections. Introduction, Syria, Newsweek, suppression of timeline events, editors at fault, is Representative Ilhan Omar a spy, external control of the media narrative. And that Omar spy is a really interesting side story that I might dig into for another video, but I recommend reading this whole thing. It's long, but it's not unreadable, and especially for the importance of it, because when he gets into it, he starts pointing out who his editors were and who's the ones that were trying to shape the narrative and keep him from being able to report on this without any pressure. And one of the main people is this Demi Reader, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. International Affairs editor at Newsweek, bylines at New York Times and Foreign Affairs, Harrods, Reuters, co-founder of Plus 972 magazine, and ex-European Council of Foreign Affairs. He founded 972 magazine, which is a liberal Israeli publication that started out by covering the 2008-2009 Gaza war. Then Tarak starts looking at his own editor's resume and realizing, like, holy crap, this guy is connected to some of the powerful elite people. He's worked for the European Council of Foreign Relations, which is a sister organization to the Council on Foreign Relations based here in the United States. And he starts to look through his history, looks through the history of the Council on Foreign Relations. I really feel like this whole situation woke this dude up. Like, if Tarak wasn't already awake to a lot of the power that goes on in the world, this kind of censorship from his own outlet really, I think, probably cemented his awakening. And interestingly enough, he talks about how Jeffrey Epstein had given money to the Council on Foreign Relations, and he says, it may be obvious to state, but the Epstein story is another that's not being investigated adequately by the media, obviously. So he goes into all the different people who spent time in the Council on Foreign Relations. He talks about Fareed Zakaria and his he's now the managing editor of Foreign Affairs, which is the publication for the CFR, and how he was shilling for war in the days after 9/11 and the years after 9/11, and how Foreign Affairs happens to be the most influential media of all media in the United States. And then he starts looking at how many of these writers, they go through the same path as Demi Reader has taken. 972 magazine's biggest funder is the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, whose president and CEO is Stephen Heinz, who is also a CFR member. In addition to his work with the European Council for Foreign Relations, Demi is also listed as a research associate at SOAS, which is the School of Oriental and African Affairs. And he basically says, numerous individuals listed as journalists have taken the same path as Zakaria. They complete State Department-funded diplomacy degrees from prestigious universities such as Harvard, Yale, Georgetown, and Johns Hopkins, or at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, before gritting their teeth at publications or think tanks funded by the CFR or Open Society foundations. Once their unquestioning obedience is demonstrated, they slowly filter into mainstream organizations or foreign affairs. And that's where they're able to promote their propaganda. And so he does a great job just really uncovering all the bullshit he's having to deal with. I did reach out to him via Twitter. I'm trying to get an interview with him. He says, I'm speaking to a number of journalists from Russian and Arabic media outlets in the next few days. I'm doing so because this is an important issue, and I've got nothing to hide about where my loyalties lie. If the US, UK media want to talk, I'm more than happy. But mostly, they're not reaching out to him. Nobody's talking to him. Peter Hitchens says, can anybody find any reference to the important new revelations about the poison gas watchdog OPCW in the so-called serious newspapers or the BBC? Please let me know. And of course, none of them are talking about it. And Aaron Mate, who's another good journalist, he got retweeted by Tarak and says, read this to understand these two global scandals. Fraud at the OPCW under U.S. pressure to suppress evidence that undermines allegations of chemical weapons, and the media scandal of Western outlets either completely ignoring the scandal or whitewashing it. And that's basically what's happening, is somebody's trying to write about the leaks, and they're getting, they have to resign because there's a cover-up going on. And even more damaging, while this was all going on, and while Tarak is getting attacked by people for being willing to speak out, because like he said, the character attacks will follow, but thank you for the support. And the character attacks did follow. But while he's writing his piece, look, WikiLeaks drops a third batch of documents proving that the bombing of Syria and Douma, based on some alleged gas attack, is bullshit. And Tarak says, still a conspiracy theory, Newsweek, as they release a third batch of documents showing doctrine of facts in released version of the OPCW chemical weapons report on Syria, including a memo stating that 20 inspectors feel the released version, quote, did not reflect the views of the team members that deployed to Syria. And you can go to WikiLeaks page on the OPCW Douma documents, where they first released this documents back in October 23rd, and then another one on November 23rd, and now these latest ones, part 3, December 14th. Today, WikiLeaks releases more documents showing internal disagreement within the OPCW about how facts were misrepresented in a redacted version of a report on alleged chemical attack in Douma, Syria in April 2018. Among these is a memo written in protest by one of the scientists sent on a fact-finding mission to investigate the attack. It is dated March 14, 2019 and addressed to Fernando Arias, Director General of the organization. This was exactly 2 weeks after the organization published its final report. And the reason that's important is because what we've been hearing from the people who are defending the OPCW is that the leaked emails we have were preliminary emails, and so that means that they weren't relevant because by the time the final version came out, all the discussion and the debate had been figured out and everything was settled. But this shows that even after 2 weeks after the fact, that there were memos being written by at least one of the scientists saying that the report is bullshit. And also it says WikiLeaks is releasing the original preliminary report for the first time, along with the redacted version for comparison. Additionally, we are publishing a detailed comparison of the original interim report with the redacted interim report and final report along with relevant comments. These documents should help clarify that the series of changes that the report went through, which skewed the facts and introduced bias according to statements made by members of the team. The aforementioned memo states that around 20 inspectors have expressed concerns over the final report, which they feel do not reflect the views of their team. Only one member of the fact-finding team that actually went to Duma, a paramedic, is said to have contributed to the final version of the report. Apart from that one person, an entirely new team was assembled to put together the final report. So they brought in their own people to basically write the report that they wanted the public to see. This new team was staffed by people who had only operated in country X, according to the memo. We don't know what country that is, but it's believed and presumed that that's likely not Syria. So these people who wrote the report probably never were in Syria. And it goes on further, but the point here is this new leak further destroys the bullshit story from the mainstream media about what happened in Syria. And not to mention, Donald Trump dropped 100 fucking Tomahawk missiles within days based on this alleged attack, and the pictures of dead children and people like that. And the media played their role and got people all riled up, and the people supported it, and nobody made a fucking peep except for, well, the truthers and the independent media, alternative media. I also want to recommend this from Caitlin Johnstone. It's a good kind of catch up of this whole situation. Deluge of new leaks further shreds the establishment Syria narrative. But guys, this really should be the biggest story. I'm working on another video right now of the top 5 or 6 biggest and ignored stories of 2019. And this is one of them. We'll do another video kind of recapping the whole thing for that series. But, guys, we should be shouting this from the fucking rooftops. Are you sharing these stories on social media? Because I've noticed my video, Newsweek journalist resigns after censorship, OPCW whistleblower destroys Duma gas attack theory. These videos are being suppressed. They're definitely not being seen by as many people as my other videos. And I know that the Jeffrey Epstein, the pedophile stuff's important, but you need to see how important this story is. There's a war going on, many wars, but the wars are based on lies. And now we have proof of a false flag, and the narrative is crumbling right in front of us. These people are being forced to come out and speak truth. The people who are actually trying to expose the story, they're having to resign. They're having to leave their jobs just to be able to tell the truth. And that should be, if we had any kind of media in this country that was legitimate, that this would be the biggest story. They would be telling people why this matters and how important it is to understand that this international body is now compromised, and that anything we've heard from the OPCW should be called into question, including the other alleged chemical attacks that were supposedly done by Assad. And again, this is not to defend or support Assad. I'm just saying, those of us who've been questioning this for a while, we've long known that there were holes in the gas attack theory, and now we have the evidence, and the media is doing everything they can to suppress people who want to write about it, such as Tarek Haddad, and they're also doing their best to malign WikiLeaks and to continue to ignore this story. This is why they want to go after Julian Assange, because of what he represents and because of what WikiLeaks represents. So this is a huge story, and I really wish you would pay attention to it, and I really hope that you'll share this video because this is fucking huge. Please spread this everywhere you can.